תודה רבה לכל מנחי כיתות האומן על סדנאות מרתקות ומעוררות השראה. אנחנו רגע לקראת סיום, ואנחנו מקווים כי הכנס היה מועיל והיה מלמד. כעת הגיע הרגע שכולנו חיכינו לו, בו נכריז על שם משימת הישראלי השני בחלל ועל תחרות מחנכים במסגרת המשימה החינוכית, וגם על הדמות המשפיעה בתחום חינוך לחלל לשנת 2020 שאתם בחרתם. להכרזות אני מתכבדת להזמין את שיילי שפיגלמן, מנכ"לית משרד המדע והטכנולוגיה, ואיתן סטיבה, הישראלי השני שיטוס לחלל. שלום חברים. אתה קולט שאתה עוד שנה לא איתנו אלא איפשהו שם בחלל? זה לא יאמן. מה עשית נניח השבוע שקשור למשימה? הרזת מזוודה, לקחת בברך שיניים, מה עשית?
הילדים שאלו אותי הרבה מה אני אקח איתי לחלל. ועוד לא הייתה לי תשובה, אבל הם נתנו לי המלצות מדהימות כמו שוקולד פרה ודברים יפים.
מה היית לוקחת, שיילי?
וואו.
היית עושה? היית יוצאת למשימה בחלל?
לא סגורה, שזה מה שהייתי עושה.
כן, אני יכולה להבין. שיילי, בבקשה.
טוב, אז שלום לכולם. מאוד מרגש להיות כאן בכנס החינוך וחלל על שם רונה רמון. מרגש לפגוש אתכם, גם אם מרחוק אומנם השנה לצערנו, אנשי ונשות החינוך שעושים רבות לאורך השנה לקידום החינוך לחלל בישראל. והכל מתוך תחושת שליחות אמיתית. בשנה המאוד מאוד מורכבת הזאת, ועל אף אתגרי הלמידה מרחוק, שאנחנו יודעים שזה לא פשוט לכולם, המשכתם אתם, מחנכים ומחנכות, להנגיש את תחום החינוך בחלל לילדי וילדות ישראל, באמצעים החדשניים ביותר, והשפעתם בעצם הלכה למעשה על דור העתיד. ותודה רבה על זה. אנחנו עומדים לקראת שנה סופר משמעותית בתחום החלל הישראלי. בתחילת השנה הבאה, 2022, תצא המשימה AX1 לחלל. זו המשימה הפרטית הראשונה בהיסטוריה, שעל סיפונה הישראלי השני שיטוס לחלל, אבל הראשון שבעצם יהיה בתחנת החלל הבינלאומית, ה-ISS. איתן סטיבה, היי איתן, מרגש, איזה כיף לך. את המשימה מובילה קרן רמון, בשיתוף סוכנות החלל הישראלית במשרד המדע והטכנולוגיה, והמשימה תוקדש כולה לטובת קידום המדע, הטכנולוגיה והחינוך בישראל. והאמת שאין מקום טבעי יותר מכנס החינוך על שמה של רונה רמון, שחלמה ופעלה רבות ליצור את החיבורים בין החלל והחינוך, החיבור החשוב הזה, להכריז על שם המשימה של איתן סטיבה, הישראלי שני שיטוס לחלל. משימה שלצד הפן המדעי והכלכלי שלה יש לה גם זרוע חינוכית חשובה לא פחות ומרכזית לא פחות שאנחנו מאוד מאוד רוצים לקדם.
במהלך
3, 2, 1.
בעיקר מתרגש, אבל גם קצת מפחד. ולומדים להתמודד עם הפחד הזה על ידי היכרות, על ידי חשיפה למידע והכנה.
אנחנו כולנו מעניקים לך את ברכת הדרך ומאחלים לך הצלחה רבה.
במהלך השבועות האחרונים אלפי אנשים הציעו שמות חדשניים, מעניינים, מיוחדים למשימה. ועדה שהתכנסה לטובת בחירת השמות שעלו לגמר, בחרה 3 שמות מצוינים לבחירת הציבור. אלומה, רקיע וקדמה. בשבוע האחרון אתם בחרתם, ועכשיו אני נרגש מאוד להכריז על שם המשימה שנבחר.
יאללה,
רקיע! זה שם נהדר.
שם באמת מצוין, איתן. תודה לכם על בחירה מצוינת. לאורך ההיסטוריה המודרנית, המסע לחלל הצית את הדמיון של מיליוני ילדים וילדות ברחבי העולם, וסיפק להם את ההשראה להעמיק בתחומי החלל, המדע והטכנולוגיה. עבור אוכלוסיות רבות שהאוריינות המדעית היא זרה ומרוחקת, בעצם החלל מהווה צוהר או גשר לרכישת המיומנויות הטכנולוגיות, שמביאות איתן הזדמנויות גם כלכליות וגם חברתיות. סוכנות החלל הישראלית ומשרד המדע והטכנולוגיה יוזמת ומקדמת פעילויות חינוכיות עשירות מאוד, השבוע הזה רק הראה את זה, ומגוונות עבור כל ילדי וילדות ישראל באשר הם. במשימת רקיע שאיתן מוביל, היא לא ספק אחת המשימות המובילות שלנו בשנה הקרובה, ביחד עם קרן רמון, ומאוד מאוד מרגשות אותנו לקידום החלל והחינוך והמדע בישראל. מרגש מאוד איתן, באמת.
תודה שיילי. במסגרת המשימה החינוכית של רקיע, אני נרגש להכריז על פרויקט שהתפרסם בימים הקרובים. יוזמת לומדים מהיקום. במסגרת היוזמה הזאת אתם תשתתפו. אנחנו מזמינים אנשי ונשות חינוך לכתוב מערכי שיעור מתחום היקום ובחיבורו לתחומים מגוונים. 4 שיעורים שיבחרו יועברו על ידי מתחנת החלל הבינלאומית.
שווה.
בהזדמנות זו אני מזמין אתכם לקחת חלק גם במשימה החינוכית. זוהי מטרה מרכזית של משימת רקיע, לעודד את ילדי וילדות ישראל לחלום גדול ורחוק, לקדם שיתופי פעולה, לאחד ולקרב לבבות תוך שימוש במרחב הקוסמי כהשראה. בהצלחה לכולנו.
ממש בהצלחה. הולכת לנו שנה מרתקת, יש לנו עוד הרבה דברים אחרים שיכולים לקרות השנה, מרתקת בתחום החלל הישראלי.
כן, זאת השנה השנייה שאנחנו מוצאים לנכון להעניק תעודה לדמות משפיעה בתחום החינוך לחלל. זאת הדרך שלנו להביע את הערכתנו על העשייה המרובה לאורך השנה. אני רוצה להזמין הבמה את רונה, מנהלת תחום חינוך וקהילה של סוכנות החלל הישראלית, להענקת התעודה.
אז אני אעניק את התעודה למי שאתם בחרתם בו. רוצה להזמין את גיל קרסנטי אלינו לקבל את התעודה. גיל מורה למדעים בבית ספר לחינוך מיוחד, פעיל חברתי ויזם סדרתי. גיל ייסד את אולימפיאדת המדע הראשונה בחינוך המיוחד. בשנה החולפת הקים גיל את יוזמת הרצאה תלמידים ברשת. ברשותך גיל, אצטט את אחת ההמלצות שקיבלנו מהבוחרים שלנו לגבי היוזמה המדהימה שלך. תוכנית הרצאת התלמידים ברשת מהווה תוכנית מופת, מותאמת לכל שכבות התלמידים על רמותיהם השונות ולכלל הציבורים והמעמדות. תוכנית שיוצרת חיבור בין מדע וערכים ומעניקה הזדמנות לכל תלמיד ותלמידה. כמחנך שעוסק בתחום החינוך המיוחד, המבין את נפשו של התלמיד, גיל מוביל את הפרויקט ברגישות ומאפשר לתלמידים חשיפה מעצימה שלעיתים אף משנה חיים.
ממש,
גיל,
ממש.
כל הכבוד.
ואני רוצה להגיד שאני החלוץ של כל התלמידים מהחינוך המיוחד, מכל אלה שהמאמץ הקשה ביותר שלהם זה להרים את הראש לשמיים, לראות את הכוכבים ואת הכוכבים שהם עצמם נמצאים. אז אני השליח של החינוך המיוחד, המורים והתלמידים, ואני מודה לכם ולכל צוות הקהילת הורייזן המופלאה על הבחירה. תודה רבה.
תודה רבה. ועכשיו יש לנו עוד הפתעה קטנה. מאיה גולן, סמנכ"לית תחום חינוך לחלל, נמצאת כאן באולפן. מאיה, את מוזמנת להיכנס. לאחר 5 שנים, רן, בוא. לאחר 5 שנים שמאיה מובילה איתנו את כנס חינוך לחלל, היא עוזבת, היא מסיימת את תפקידה, ומצאנו לנכון להעניק לך את התעודה על כל הדברים המדהימים שעשית. הלכת איתנו יד ביד במשך 5 שנים, את הכנס מההתחלה ועד הסוף, ואת כל היוזמות המדהימות שרקמנו ביחד. את לא עוזבת אותנו, אבל אנחנו רוצים להגיד תודה רבה רבה. תודה למאיה.
תודה רבה לכם, תודה על כל המילים האלה, על התעודות המרגשות וכל האירוע היפה הזה. הולכת להיות שנה מאוד מעניינת בתחום החלל. אנחנו רוצים באמת להודות לכל המורים והמחנכים שמקדישים ימים ולילות להטמעת תוכניות בנושא חלל במסגרות השונות, לחברי קהילת הורייזן, קהילת מחנכי החלל של ישראל, שמהווה נדבך משמעותי ועיקרי בהוראת החלל. מורי הכוורת שהצטרפו אלינו למפגש המרתק הזה מתבקשים למלא את המשוב שנשלח לכם ברגעים אלו בצ'אט. לכל מי שיתאהב בשילוב בין אומנות לחלל אתם מוזמנים להשתתף בפאנל אומנות ייחודי שיגיע ב8, לא הרבה זמן לחכות, בברכת המשך שנה פוריה ומעצימה, הפיקוח על הוראת מדע וטכנולוגיה, הפיקוח על הוראת גיאוגרפיה, אדם וסביבה במשרד החינוך, קרן רמון וסוכנות החלל הישראלית במשרד המדע והטכנולוגיה. אז עוד מעט, ממש ב8, בדיוק, פאנל בנושא אומנות וחלל. תכף ניפגש. רק מבקשת לתקן, מדובר ב8:30 ולא בדיוק ב8, אז אנחנו ממש עוד מעט נפגשים, הפסקה קטנה, ארוחת ערב, קצת ככה להתעבר ותחזרו. ועכשיו, פאנל בנושא אומנות וחלל. It's my great honor to welcome you all to a very special event called Art and Space Panel, following of the screening of the film Inner Telescope, a space artwork by Eduardo Katz. This event will also be the grand finale for the 2021 Israeli Space Week event. It will take us on a journey all the way to space, only to ask some very fundamental questions about ourselves as human beings, as artists, as space explorers. With us today are three unusual and vanitizing guests. Our first guest is Eduardo Katz. Katz is an internationally recognized artist. Katz emerged in the early 90s with his radical work combining robotics and living organisms. In 2017, Katz made an artwork with outer space with the cooperation of the French astronaut Thomas Pesquet. Katz's work has been exhibited internationally at leading venues all across the globe and has been showcased in a number of groundbreaking arts events. Our second guest is filmmaker and artist Virgil Novarina. After studying mathematics and physics, Virgil Novarina developed himself to artistic exploration of his own sleep through writing, drawing, and the sleep of others through photographs and films. In parallel, Virgil Novarina makes films about artists he admires, among them Eduardo Katz, the film we will be watching later this evening. Our third guest and the host of our panel is Dr. Batsheva Goldman-Ida, a curator and art history expert who is very well familiar with Eduardo Katz's arts for many years. Dr. Goldman-Ida is interested in the act of broadening the presence of art into new, unexplored, and unusual fields such as bioart, immersive digital environment, and art in zero-G conditions.
And I'm going to begin with a short visual description of the wonderful work of our two guests. And if we could put on the presentation, please. Okay, so you see, I don't see it, but, oh, here we go. Okay, very good, 1 minute. So, what you see on the left is the first presentation of this movie that you will see later on at the Louvre in Paris. And Eduardo chose this poem, this discussion of poetry by Apollinaire, which works well for both of the artists. Poets will carry you living and awake in a nocturnal world sealed with dreams into universes which tremble ineffably above our heads. And I want to begin with Virgil and let you know who he is. He's interested in exceptional and non-conventional artists, and as Yael said, one of these artists is Eduardo. So other work that he has done is a film that just is coming out now of Pierre Pinocelli, and the artist Jean-Olivier Coulclou. And this is besides his other interest in sleep. And what he has done in the last couple of years is amazing. He worked with Walid Brady, and he has an in 2017 he did an interactive exhibition where on the left-hand side you see a video affected by the brainwaves of Virgil sleeping, on the right of the visitors, and in the middle of the slide itself. Then in 2019, he expanded these ideas, and in a city in Denmark, he used 40 residents and filmed the city's scenes during sleep for 7 consecutive days. And his latest work is also involved with sleep, where the water, the waves of the water are affected by his sleeping processes over time. So it's wonderful to have them together tonight. Eduardo, I have to introduce, first of all, by saying that he believes in the instability of the object. This is his goal in all of the art forms that he's chosen to work in. And he's a true pioneer in these fields of digital telecommunications, robotics, holograms, bioart, and now zero gravity. And his connection to space is from a very early period. So we see very early digital work that he did that he had to type initially on a typewriter. And in 1990, he did a hologram art series called Andromeda. And here his idea was to see the letters as a form from 3 different directions. Okay, and these holograms are specifically designed so that they can be experienced in not one dimension, but more. And when he used BioArt, this is a good example of an early work, where he took the verse from Genesis and translated it into DNA and incorporated it into bacteria. And during the exhibition, the mutation of the bacteria changed the DNA and the Morse code and the original verse from Genesis. Then later, he does artworks that are known, very well known today by artists, where you put a system of microorganisms that respond to light and temperature and change shape and form. So you have a living artwork. His most famous work, of course, is the Alba, the GFP bunny, that has taken the world by storm for many, many years. And for us, as people interested in space, his latest works, and this is still ongoing, is a project he has using the Google Earth satellite. And so he calls it La Google Glyph. And he took that idea of the rabbit's head, and he envisioned an artwork that can only be seen from outer space, only enjoyed by satellite. So you see that it looks like a rather clear image as a garden on Earth, but from space, it's a completely different thing. And again, here we have it on the top of the building and from space. So you see that Eduardo is very, very much interested in the new dimension of space travel. And it's amazing that in 2007, he already wrote a manifesto of space poetry, where he said that the poem only and fully realizes itself in a gravitational environment other than the one ordinarily experienced on Earth. And this is what we will see today. So now I'd like to bring our guests together and be happy to ask them some questions that I'm sure you're interested in hearing about. So Eduardo, after reading your manifesto on space poetry just now, I was wondering if you could tell the audience about your journey. This is 2007, and you realized it in 2017, that's 10 years. Can dreams really come true? Why did it take so long? And please tell us about it. Tell us how it happened.
Thank you. As you pointed out, I have been working as an artist for 40 years. So in the course of 4 decades, I've gone through a lot of different phases and developments. You showed some examples of my work in holography with language. And I am very interested in what happens when you explore the poetics of language in a hologram, in the sense that you could have a word that transforms into another, or you can have two people looking at the same point on the surface of the hologram, but reading completely different things. So this is only possible because I was writing with light. And of course, everything on Earth experiences gravity, but from the point of view of the observer, of the reader, it is as if gravity had no effect on these three-dimensional forms, because I'm writing with light, with photons. So I basically can manipulate language as if it's floating in space and time.
But why is it important to you? Why, Edward? Why is it important to you to describe an object that is in change, in flux?
Because in life, the only constant is change. And the tradition of art and poetry is predicated on the forms that the artists create and the poets write remaining the same. Think of a painting, think of a sculpture, think of a traditional poem. So I feel that in order to more poignantly express life as we experience it in this environment of information and flux, I feel that I need to work with media that allow me to produce changing experiences, that the viewer plays a role in what he or she sees. So in the case of holography, I even envisioned back in 1986 one holographic poem that would be sent, as you mentioned, in the direction of Andromeda. So it's been a dream of mine since the 80s, but it was not really until 2006 that in dialogue with Gérard Azoulay, who is the director of the Space Observatory, which is the cultural lab of the French Space Agency, that it became possible for me to become an artist in residence at the French Space Agency. And from basically 2007 to 2017, when this work was realized, I have been on this journey for 10 years. So yes, dreams can come true.
Thank you. Okay, Virgil, I was interested very much in hearing from you. Why was it that you, when you met Eduardo, that you decided right away that you want to make a documentary of him, even before the space program?
Well, when I discovered Eduardo's work, I think it was in 2005 or 2006, I was really very impressed, and I felt that it was like an exploration of the boundaries of art. And it seems to be very interesting for me. And those boundaries are between art and poetry, between art and science, but also between human and animals, and more recently human and vegetables also. And all these boundaries, when he begins to interact with them, in a way they change. So art can go further after that. And he did that in many, many different ways. So very, very quickly when I met him, I have decided to film him every time we met, because I thought I'm very lucky to know him now. And so very quickly I decided to make a film about his entire work, but in a long time. It will be maybe in 20 years.
Yes, and Thomas Pesquet, the astronaut, who's not here with us now, I think our audience would be very interested in hearing something personal about him. What is he like as a person, this astronaut, Thomas?
The astronaut Thomas Pesquet is very friendly, and when we met him, it was in Germany, in the astronaut training center. And he was really very open-minded. And it was for him the beginning of his training for the first mission. And he thought, what could I do in space without do the same as in Earth? For example, he wanted to invent a game. On Earth, we can play card with gravity. And he was thinking about maybe another game in space. So when Eduardo told him he wanted to conceive and to realize with him an artwork, especially for weightlessness. It was directly very interesting for him. So I think he's also interested in art.
Very nice, thank you. And Eduardo, now I want to speak more directly about inner telescope and your idea of the word moi. You chose the French word, and it can be seen as you say, as an object, an unstable object. In one sense, it's a word. In the other sense, it's some kind of a floating object. How would you describe the artwork for us?
As our audience will see later on in the film, the artwork is predicated on being made in outer space. That is, not being brought ready from Earth, but it being actually manufactured, fabricated aboard the International Space Station. So I asked Thomas to get 2 sheets of paper and scissors, and to cut one of the sheets of paper in a form that from one perspective resembles a letter M, but also cut a hole in the center. And I asked him to roll the other sheet and insert as a tube in that hole. The result is a form that from one perspective has this letter that is the letter M, the tube is the letter I, and the end of the tube is the letter O, the circular form. This in French spells the word moi, which could be I or myself if it's in a sentence. However, because the object is constantly changing its position due to the turbulent air currents in the International Space Station, from another perspective, that same form looks like a stylized human being with the umbilical cord cut, which becomes especially dramatic when you see the form with the Earth in the background. Then the message is fully communicated.
And how does that relate to the title, Inner Telescope? Where is that part of the inner telescope for us?
The idea behind that is that on Earth, we point our telescopes to the sky, and this being an artwork, it points back to us. So it's a way of us reconsidering our position in relation to the cosmos, because I believe that as we moved into the 21st century and beyond, our presence in the cosmos will increase dramatically. We will experience outer space on a more regular basis, especially if compared to how we do it now. And to me, this is particularly significant because it will originate a new cultural practice. We are accustomed to space culture on Earth. For example, Isaac Asimov's sci-fi novels. That's space for us on Earth. But what kind of culture could emerge if we originate a new set of cultural practices in space for space?
Right. And also from the art point of view, it's a poem in a sense. It's a poetic statement. It's an art object, but it's also performance, because what Thomas is doing is executing the work in real time. And so we have to say that it's the first time really that you have an art object that is non-functional within a space station, no? That seems to me very it was conceived specifically for zero gravity, and this was interesting when I first had the conversation with Thomas, because the gravity on Earth gives us references that we are very accustomed to, top and bottom, north and south, and so on. But these references don't really function in an environment of weightlessness, not in that sense. When you look at the architecture of the space station, the astronauts work in every direction. There is no ceiling exactly
They work in 360 in all directions. So this work in a telescope has no top, no bottom, no left, no right, no front, no back. So it's unusual in that sense, because we are accustomed to see the top of a painting. You put the sculpture on a base because it has a bottom. This artwork in a telescope has none of those references, and it works in every direction and is constantly changing because it's interacting with the invisible forces of the air currents aboard the space station.
Thank you, thank you. Now, Virgil, we have lots of questions about the movie itself, because you have different locations, different trips to space, and in most of your previous films, you always have a very lovely way of allowing relationships between people, or long shot scenes of the environment to leave time for reflection within the movie. And I was wondering what your narrative structure was, how you envisioned this amazing film that you created.
Well, this film in a way is like a daydream in the Parisian subway. So I filmed many tunnels in Paris, but also in Germany. There are some tunnels from Chicago, naturally. And the film itself is like a daydream in the sense that the viewers have a lot of time to think and very precise informations. But I always try to give the informations after that the viewers have time to ask themselves the question. And also there is no voiceover in the film, because I wanted to people to be in a state of meditation in a way, and to have time to be with their own inner dialogue that could conduct eventually to a very good reception of the artwork at the end.
And an inner telescope, how did you decide, for example, how long the performance of Thomas would take place? Why does it take place only, well, we won't tell you when, but what was your thinking in Inner Telescope?
Well, it's a good question, because in some films you have a constraint of the duration. And with the Observatoire de l'Espace du CNES, who produced the artwork and produced also the film, I had the chance, I was lucky, because I was free to choose the duration. So what I did, I didn't choose it at the beginning. So I made the film scene by scene. And then when the film was finished, the editing was finished, then I saw that it was 35 minutes long. It's not something that I've decided at the beginning. But it was for me the best duration to conduct the people. The entire film is like a tunnel that conducts to the birth of the artwork. So finally it was 35 minutes long.
Beautiful. Eduardo, I wanted to mention for our Israeli audience that your work in a telescope was shown in the Galerie and Charlot in Tel Aviv in the same year that it was shown at the Louvre. And what was that experience like, to have an exhibition in Israel, and how did people relate to the film while you were there?
Well, for me it was very exciting because it was my first solo show in Israel. Valerie, who is the director of the gallery, had opened it recently, and I had not visited until then. So I discovered the gallery in Yafa at the same time that I was having this exhibition. And the space is very nice. And it enabled me to show a selection from a long series of works that informs this inner telescope piece, with drawings and embroideries and photographs and the video as well.
Beautiful. And now I have questions for both Virgil and Eduardo. Would you have preferred to go to space yourselves? That's my question. And then what kind of tips can you give to our audience about future art projects or films in space? Eduardo, maybe you'll start and say say, why didn't you go?
Well, it's not so much a question of, for me, a preference of going instead, but perhaps in addition. I was extremely happy with this process working with Gérard Azoulay, Thomas Pesquet, Virgile, the Kines, Essa. The whole experience was absolutely extraordinary and fantastic. This opens up the possibility of dreaming of other projects, perhaps even including an eventual trip, because as we know, that is on the horizon, the idea of private trips to the ISS and other orbital stations are in the horizon of the future. And as tips, what I would say is patience and perseverance. To me, those are the two key factors that enable this type of work.
That's right. Virgile, what do you think? What can you suggest to our audience for all the people inspired by your work?
Well, I think that before this experience, I would have said yes, I would be happy to go to space without to think more than that. But when I saw the training of Thomas Pesquet, how difficult it is, then when I realized how difficult it is also to spend 6 months in space without to smell the real air, to see the real sun directly and so on, and how dangerous also it is to come back, I realized that I would maybe go if I had a good training and if I was maybe younger. But it's really a challenge to go there and to come back safely. And I'm I have a great admiration for people who work and make that possible.
Yes. And what suggestions do you have for our audience who want to be involved with space in some kind of a film or...
Well, if you see sculpture as a dialogue with gravity, as it is sometimes, or if you see dance as a dialogue with gravity also as it is sometimes, it would be very interesting for sculptures or for dancers to make something especially in space for sure.
Oh, how exciting. Okay, well, I want to have the opportunity now to invite the Director General of the Israeli Space Agency, Avi Blasberger, to share a few words with us before we see this amazing film. And I must tell you, stay till the end, because the final artwork as it goes through the space station is just majestic. So Avi, can you join us, please?
Yes, thank you, Batsheva. And thank you, Virgil and Eduardo. I want to thank you about the fascinating panel and fascinating presentation, and for the opportunity to look on different angles of work in space. Usually, connotation about space includes thoughts about exploration, science, technology, engineering, but as it on Earth, art is not less important. And here we heard about innovative art in space. Almost 3 years ago, I had the chance to visit an exhibition in Yafo together with my colleague, the head of the French Space Agency, CNES, and to meet Eduardo's fascinating work. I had also the honor to meet Eduardo here in Israel and also in Chicago, and I learned a lot about his innovative work. It took a little while, but I'm glad that we managed to host you here in this event, and hopefully we'll host you here in Israel once more. The Israeli Space Agency is operating in a wide range of fields and activity to enhance public engagement in space, and we hope that such events may attract people that we hardly reached them otherwise. Only a short while ago, 600 space educators and other space enthusiastic participants in a conference that targeted exactly that goal. The way space could be approached through a wide range of subjects beyond science, technology, and engineering. I hope you enjoyed this panel. Actually, I'm sure you enjoyed this panel, and from other events and activity throughout the Israeli Space Week. Now I will invite you all to stay with us for the second part of this evening and to see the movie by Virgil Novorina, Inner Telescope, a space artwork by Eduardo Katz, executed by the astronaut Thomas Pusquet. Thank you very much and enjoy the movie.
Donc moi je suis Thomas Pesquet, astronaute de l'Agence spatiale européenne depuis 2009. En 2014 j'ai été désigné sur une mission de 6 mois dans la station spatiale. Cette mission s'appelle Proxima. Donc ça va